Alright, what's up, everybody? We're back with another edition of Everyday Hoops. Hope you guys are having a good one. Today, we're going to be talking about the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat have really been struggling recently. They're on the biggest losing streak. They've fallen in the standings and everything like that. We're going to talk about here in today's video. What's the problem with them? Thank you guys for the views on the videos and the shorts recently. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed the content around here. Consider subscribing, like, turn notifications, also like that. I'd really appreciate it. Really upset a lot. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. We are so close. We're at 495. We are literally 5 away from hitting 500 subscribers mark. So if you like the content, hit the subscribe button would mean a whole lot to me. Yeah, link to my Twitter, TikTok, stuff like that in the description down below. And yeah, don't waste any more of your time. Let's get right into it. So the Miami Heat recently have been struggling a lot. They have currently on a 7-game losing streak, the longest in the NBA. They have fallen all the way to 7th in the Eastern Conference and are only now 1 game above 500 at 24-23, where they were comfortably sitting around top 4, top 5 in the East for a while, and they have since taken a significant drop from there, losing 7 in a row. And looking at this team, the last 7 games, they have not looked like the Miami Heat we're used to. Start the year, they won a 7-game win streak early in the season, and all the role players are stepping up despite injuries and stuff, and it was like, oh shoot. Well, the Miami Heat are still a really good team. Still a team you really have to, give respect to and credit as maybe a contender in the East and all stuff like that. But now they've really just been like in a free fall. That's really what it's been. Like they've just not looked like the same Miami Heat team that we're used to seeing. You know, looking at the numbers, these numbers are just for the past 7 games. This has looked like one of the worst teams in the NBA in the past 7 games. Looking at their numbers. Got this 7-game losing streak. They're last in points per game. They averaging a little bit less than 102 points per game. Last in field goals made. They're just under 36. They're bottom 5 field goal attempts. They're 30th in field goal percentage, shooting just 43% from the field as a team. They're not getting easy ones either. They're 30th in free throw attempts, averaging a little bit under 19 free throw attempts per game in the last 7. So they're not getting easy ones. But they're second in free throw percentage. That's also probably because it's a smaller sample size. But they're not getting to the line, even though they're good at the line. But even the other things too, like rebounding, they're 27th in rebounds, 39 per game. Specifically, they're 29th in defensive rebounds per game. They're 30th in assists, averaging a little under 23 assists per game. They have the worst offense of this last 7 games, 28th defense, last in net rating, a negative 17.3 in net rating. They're also 28th in pace, true shooting percentage, they're last, effective field goal percentage, they're last. Even defensively, they have not looked great. The numbers don't look kind of about average-ish because it's still the Miami Heat. They can still do that. But specifically bad is their 3-pointers against other teams. When they're shooting threes out of this 7-game stretch, they've been about average, but they're giving up a lot of threes. They're 29th in opponent 3-pointers made throughout this 7-game stretch, averaging a little bit over 16, and they're last in opponent 3-point percentage. Teams are shooting 45% from 3. So not only is their offense struggling, but they're also giving up a lot of threes. And that's a recipe to lose a lot of games in today's NBA. And yeah, they just have not looked like the same Miami team we're used to seeing. This 7-game losing streak. It's not like they've been on a super tough stretch and they've lost 7 to like really good teams. They have some bad losses. They lost to the Toronto Raptors by 24 points against the Raptors in Toronto. That was the game after the Raptors traded Pascal Siakam. They just completely utterly lost this game, scored less than 100 points to the Raptors. They gave up 41 points in the first quarter to the Toronto Raptors. Gary Trent Jr. hit 8 threes. RJ had 26. Scotty had 25 and 8. Man, quickly had 17. It was just, the Raptors came out and blew them out in their first loss of this stretch, And then this next game, they lost to the Atlanta Hawks by 1 in a very tight one. DeJounte Murray hit the game winner at 22 and 11 assists. That's a tough loss. Jimmy had 25, Tyler had 25, 21 for Bam. That's just you're going to have those losses sometimes where it's just another team hits a game-winning shot. DeJounte Murray was on a heater at that point, So you lose the first 2 games. But then after that, it starts getting kind of like, okay. In Orlando, they lost by 18 to the Magic, a team that they're trying to, stay on top of in the standings. They got blown out by the Orlando Magic in the 3rd and 4th quarter. They got outscored 33-23 in the 3rd and 24-18 in the 4th. It makes it a blowout game there. So it's like, all right, now we lost 3 in a row. All right, let's get it together. That next game, though, they lose to the Memphis Grizzlies with nobody. You know, the Grizzlies, and shout out to the Grizzlies. Honestly, the Grizzlies have been playing really good basketball as of recently, but like it's been bad. That was a bad loss, bro. Losing to the Grizzlies by 9 at home again, tough loss. I mean, Vince Williams dropped 25 points on them. The Grizzlies had set 6 players scoring double figures. Scottie Pippen Jr. had 15, 6, and 6. G.G. Jackson had 17. That's a bad loss. That was also Terry Rozier's first game in Miami, where he didn't have a great one. Shot 3 for 11. Jimmy was 4 for 10. Bam was 4 for 13. The bench didn't really provide much beside Caleb Martin. That was a bad game. That was a bad loss. That was a pretty bad game on Miami Heat's part. That's the game you got to win. It's a tough Grizzlies team. And shout out to the Grizzlies. They actually have been balling recently, despite having nobody. It's been literally just Jaren and like the G Leaguers. But yeah. And then after that, they go on TNT. They get blown out by the Celtics by 30. And then Saturday on ABC, they play against the Knicks in New York. They lose by 16. And then last night, they lost on NBA TV to the Suns. It was a 13-point loss at the end of the day, but the Suns were up by like 25 going into the fourth quarter. It was not a close game. And yeah, so now we're on the 7-game losing streak, the Miami Heat. They're falling all the way again down to 7th in the East. They're actually tied with the Magic for that 7th spot. The Magic would have won last night, which that was a really tough loss to the Magic. They had a big 16-point lead. They lost that game. Magic would have been overtaken. The Heat would have fallen to 8th if the Magic would have won that game. But since they have the tiebreaker, they have the lead over Orlando. But they look bad. This has not been the Miami team we've been seeing all season. You know, their offense has been horrible. Their defense has been just average, which if you have a horrible offense, in their defense, usually they can rely on, you know, even if their offense having a bad night, they can rely on their defense kind of stepping up and holding teams to under 100 points and stuff like that. But it has not been like that either. You know, they have allowed more than 100 points throughout this entire 7-game win streak. The lowest amount of points they allowed is 105. And in those 2 games, they scored under 90. Under 100. But yeah, throughout the 7-game losing streak, 3 of those 7 losses, they've scored under 100 points. 97, 96. They only scored 87 points in a game against the Magic. You know, like, that's not going to cut it. 87 points in today's NBA is like, that's third quarter scores type of stuff. You know what I mean? And that's the entirety of the season. I mean, you know, the Heat aren't an explosive offense by any stretch of the imagination. You know, we all know that their offense is really, you know, their offense is not like that. You know, their offense is not a high-powered, crazy thing that happens often. But this season alone, they have 11 games where they have under 100 points. 11 games. And in those 11 games, they're 2-9 in those 11 games. Only 2 wins. Were actually recently, right before the 7-game stretch, they won a 3-game winning streak where they won 2 of those 3 games by scoring less than 100. They beat the Magic 99-96. They beat the Nets in overtime 96-95. You know, after that, besides those 2 games, every game they scored under 100, they've lost. You know, which, I mean, makes sense. Obviously, if you're scoring under 100 points in today's NBA, you're probably losing. Unless you're a team like the Miami Heat, which has been kind of the poster child the last few years of, hey, we might have the best offense, but, you know, we're going to just grit and grind. If we're not going to score 100, you're not scoring 100 either. You know, but it has not been like that this season. Their defense hasn't been saving them. You know, they've, right now, in the entirety of the season, they have the 14th rated defense, which is about, of course, average. Their offense is 23rd rated. Their net rating is 20th out of 30. This has not been the same team, and they've had players really struggling. You know, Terry Rozier just got there in Miami. His first 4 games, he's averaging a little bit under 12 points. He's not shooting the ball super well, though. He's shooting only 38% from the field, 35% from 3. Jimmy Butler just doesn't. Jimmy Butler, we know this about Jimmy Butler. Regular season, he's going to be here once in a while, but he's not really going to try too much. You know, and he has not been trying, even though the Miami Heat kind of need him right now. Miami Heat need Jimmy Butler to be Jimmy Butler. You know, but he has not been like that. I mean, on the year, he's averaging 21, 5, and 4. Numbers, the shooting numbers look great and stuff like that. But you could tell he's just not looking to be Jimmy Butler right now. You know, he went on a stretch where he was only taking like 12, 11 shots per game, you know, and he just wasn't really being aggressive. And yeah, that's cool. But, you know, you got to be like confirmed in, like, if they were a top 3 seed and Jimmy was kind of just like taking back, then it's like, all right, Jimmy, you do your thing because your team is doing good. But Jimmy, you guys are in the play-in again right now. You guys are on a 7-game losing streak. You guys have a offense is on the worst pace right now. You got to step up and do something. You know, you got to start taking it into your own hands. Bam has been good. You know, he hasn't been shooting the ball super well as of recently, but Bam has been doing all other things like the rebounds, the assists, defensively he's still there, obviously stuff like that. Tyler Hero has not had a great 7 game stretch either. You know, the numbers for like the entirety of the year still look good. He's shooting 40% from three. He's leading the team in scoring, but over this last 7 games, he has not been great. He's shooting 40% from the field, 38% from three. He's averaging 18, 4, and 3, which aren't horrible numbers, but it's not what he was used to having, especially at the start of the year. Even when he came back, he went on a hot streak, but now he's not really been as efficient and as, consistent as he usually had been to start the season. You know, the role players have not been stepping up either. You got a game here from Doug Robinson, a game here from Caleb Martin, and stuff like that. But they have not been super consistent like what they have been to start the season. And of course, last year's playoff run where the role players had an insane, you know, stretch. The role players have not been the same this year. Kevin Love is older. Josh Richardson has been in and out of the lineup. Caleb Martin has missed a lot of time as well this season. They had Nikola Jovic just playing minutes, which he's not really playing much anymore. Thomas Bryant and Orlando Robinson were getting minutes. They're not doing much anymore. Jaime Jaquez, who's been one of the more important and better players on the Miami Heat, he missed a lot of time as well the last few games. Now he's coming back. He's kind of on a minutes restriction a little bit. He hasn't been playing as many minutes, as he's used to playing. It just has not looked good in Miami. Everything about this Heat team right now has been tough. They've been on a really rough stretch. Their offense looks horrible, and I don't really know. Like, the only way the Miami Heat fixes this is if the role players get back to playing how they're playing. That's honestly how Miami kind of rolls. They rely on players that you don't really expect that, aren't the biggest names. They don't really expect to taking big jumps. Like last year, they made it to the finals off the backs of course, Jimmy Butler was playing great, Bam was doing good, but they kind of needed guys like Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Caleb Martin, Duncan Robinson to, perform and really carry them this far, And now they're kind of relying on them again this year. And it started off good, but now it's kind of coming back to earth. And I feel like this is just the problem Miami's going to run into is at some point, these role players are going to come back down to earth. Doug Robinson's not going to average 15 points per game and shoot crazy for the entirety of the year. Caleb Martin isn't having an entire season where he's averaging 16 points on something percent shooting. Kevin Love and Josh Richardson are in their 30s now. Kevin Love is 35. At this point, what are you really expecting for Kevin Love to do? That's not, what he's doing now, which 9.6 rebounds. Like, that's pretty solid. Haywood Highsmith, he's having a good year. He's become a starter now. He's been good. But it's like, we're not in a playoffs, in a whole season, why are we counting on Haywood Highsmith, to be, like, what are we, expecting Haywood Highsmith to be? At some point, Miami's going to have these stretches where their offense is not good enough. And I think we just have to kind of live with that. Miami has to live with that at this point, that they're going to have stretches where their offense are going to go cold and they're going to have bad stretches because they rely on players that, are solid role players, but they rely on players that, I don't even know how to say it. Like, they're relying on so much to happen. They rely on Caleb Martin to catch fire, and Duncan Robinson to catch fire, and Josh Richardson and Kevin Love to catch fire, and Jaime Jaquez to catch fire. They rely on that, but even though they do have good players like Tyler Herro, Jimmy Butler, and Bam, those three are pretty good. But what really takes the team over the top is the role players, and really what makes them win games. And you show that when they're not doing much and they're not really stepping up on either side, it's like, it's not great. So how do we fix this? Well, first of all, Jimmy Butler has to step up. Usually in the playoffs, they also can rely on Jimmy Butler being playoff Jimmy. Playoff Jimmy might need to come out a little early because this Heat team is really struggling and they don't have a sizable lead on anybody right now. Playoff Jimmy Butler needs to come out. Tyler Herro needs to be more of a consistent. But after that, they need the role players to really step up. And this is a big stretch for Miami because the games don't get easier. Honestly, that before the last 3 games where they're all on TV, that little stretch before was supposed to be kind of like the good stretch until we get into the tough stretch. Like Toronto, Atlanta, Memphis, then Orlando was going to be a tough game. But 3 of those 4 games, those are winnable games. Those are win games, especially for Miami. Those are games that you just come out and do that thing. Then now you go on a stretch of Boston, New York, Phoenix. They play Sacramento tomorrow. Then they go in Washington, which should be a win. If they don't win that game against Washington, things need to happen right there. But then after that, they go on another tough stretch before the All-Star break. They play the Clippers, Magic again. They get an easier game against the Spurs. Then they get Boston, Milwaukee, Philly back to back to back. And Milwaukee and Philly are on the road on back-to-back days. So they have a really tough stretch coming into All-Star break. And really, out of these games, only 2 of them right now, Wizards and Spurs, are the easy ones. After that, all those rest of those teams are playoff teams. You know, like especially that Boston, Milwaukee, Philly 3 games in 4 days is gonna be hell for them. You know, especially if they can't get this offense right, like it's gonna be hell for them. So the Heat could be in serious trouble. He could be in serious trouble. They really have to step up and get it together at some point. Eric Spoelstra's going to have to get into his bag again of magic that he always has and come together and find something with this team. Because if they don't, it could be dangerous. It can get really dangerous in Miami and not in a good way. But yeah, it's going to be it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, if you enjoyed the content around here, consider subscribing, like, turn notifications, also like that. Really appreciate it. Really helps out a lot. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow.